Please welcome Scott Sampson.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for hanging in there with us. I have been told to accelerate my comments because we're running a little long, so I will work on doing exactly that. This is me at the age of 4. I grew up in Vancouver, British Columbia. This is me hanging out in the Rockies north of the Canada-US border. I did this multiple times a year. My family took me camping. And this is not where I connected with nature. I connected with nature close to home. And I'll bet that most of you did the same. We know now from research that people connect with nature through abundant, everyday exposure with nearby nature, not periodic visits to national parks and wilderness. They help, but they're not the answer. And as we've heard, this is not the standard today. That we have all these rampant health problems, like Governor Hickenlooper mentioned, to the point where one U.S. Surgeon General recently announced that this generation of children growing up today could be the first to have a life expectancy shorter than that of their parents. That's something to think about. Many kids today reach the age of 10 or 11 without an unsupervised moment, living virtually under house arrest. We need to change that. And it isn't critical only for the health of kids, but of course, as we've heard, for the health of the places that we live. We can ask the question, how is ecological sustainability even possible unless we care about the places we live? And why would we possibly care if we don't go outside and connect with those places? A screen looks the same in Denver as it does in Miami or Timbuktu. We need to get kids outside. It is critical for the health of kids and the places that they live. So, how might we do this? I'm going to argue that much of the answer comes down to one word which you may be familiar with: rewilding. Now, rewilding is not about giving up technology and going back to nature. Rewilding isn't about working to revive some ancient ecosystem or restoring wildlife at the expense of humanity. Put simply, rewilding is about making the world and ourselves a little wilder. It's about fostering an entirely new kind of future, one in which both people and nature thrive. Grounded in a mix of science and compassion, rewilding is about turning away from despair and embracing hope, but of the fully engaged sort. Author David Moore once said that hope is a verb with its sleeves rolled up. That's what we're after here. So, what might it look like? For about 3 decades, rewilding has been something that you might have associated with places like Yellowstone, the reintroduction of wolves, for example. And we know that by putting these top carnivores back in the ecosystem, it changed everything, cascading effects. Elk started to avoid the rivers. Plants came up in those riparian habitats. Beavers returned, fish returned. All these things happened just because those top carnivores were reinserted. But I'd like to propose that rewilding has a broader definition, and others are coming on board and embracing this as well. A definition close to home, that rewilding can be about cities. It can be about making cities wilder, and it can be about us. Inner rewilding. It's about making our bodies and minds wilder as well. So let me be a little bit more specific. There is now an abundant amount of data that if you want to make a city wilder, if you want to increase the biological diversity or biodiversity, it's as simple as planting native plants. That native plants attract native insects, and not just 1 or 2 kinds, but dozens of different kinds of insects, sometimes hundreds, depending on the place. And those native insects, in turn, attract native birds and other vertebrates. So we can make our cities much, much wilder from the bottom up, not just the top down, not just adding top carnivores, but by adding native plants, we can rewild these places that we live. And in doing so, we will rewild ourselves along the way, our minds and bodies. That rewilding is about keeping that sense of wonder that all kids have. It's about holding on to that enchantment that nature has. It's about understanding the places that we live and really developing a love for those places. So, how might this happen? Well, if we look in places like Denver, we will find a lot of organizations that are already doing this work in some way or another, this nature connection work. I work at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, and we do this work, but there are many, many other organizations in this city. In fact, if you count them all up, there's well over 100 organizations connecting people with nature, and this is true of every city in this country. And all these organizations are doing great work at the level of dozens, hundreds, thousands of kids. And we're still not moving the needle. If you look at the urban scale, we're still really not making a mark. The work to connect children with nature is still largely work that influences white, affluent kids. Every kid deserves nature, no matter what their skin color, no matter what their family income. And the only way we're going to get to all those kids is through collaboration. I like to use the metaphor of a Swiss Army knife. And imagine that every organization on this Swiss Army knife is a separate tool with a unique set of assets. And imagine if we all came together to leverage each other's assets to do things that none of us could do on our own. One term used to describe this kind of process is collective impact. And it's been applied now in the Children and Nature movement to some extent, but this model to really make it take off still hasn't happened. And I think Denver could be the place where that really, really takes off. So how might this work? What might we actually do if we come together? Money is not going to be our challenge. The challenge is vision and collaboration, playing together in the sandbox. So, nature connection, rewilding, the two sides of the coin are access and engagement. The access part is about creating new green spaces. The engagement part is about programming, revitalizing those green spaces. Schoolyards like this are a great place to start. Outdoor classrooms, gardens, native plants, all these things can be used to help engage kids. And then out-of-school programs are powerful too, and these are happening around the country. It's another great way to engage kids, particularly kids from underserved communities. We can also think about the power of gardening. We have broken the equation that food equals nature. We need to remake that equation, and one of the best ways to do that is through gardens, whether they're community gardens or school gardens. And ultimately, we have to provide another vision of the future. A vision of the future that doesn't include post-apocalyptic scenarios driven by zombies. And yet, the numbers of post-apocalyptic films have doubled every decade since the 1950s. This is the vision that kids grow up with. This is why most kids and adults think that the future is going to be worse, not better. So, we've already heard from Martin Luther King. Let's mention him again. No movement can be successful unless we present a vision that people are compelled to move towards. So what's that vision going to be for Denver and for Colorado? It's going to be different in every place. We need to come up with this vision. And it has to be a vision that includes cities. Imagine if we go from cities as places where nature is pushed to the outskirts to inventing cities as places where people and nature thrive together. This is where rewilding is going to happen. This is where nature connection will happen. This is where we will raise kids that care about this place so that a generation from now, they will vote to protect all of those national parks and other open spaces. Just to wrap up here, I want to emphasize that this is not just about kids and nature. This is about health. Children's health depends on us connecting them with nature. This is about education, place-based understanding, and engaging kids emotionally. This is about economics. Portland has shown us that adding nature into the city can help drive tourism. We know that it can help raise environments up in schoolyards, as we've heard today from Heather. This is about social justice. It's about making sure that every kid has access to these green spaces and these opportunities. And finally, this is about sustainability. I don't think that we can get to sustainability. We can't even begin to address issues like climate change and species extinction and habitat destruction in meaningful ways unless we care about the natural world. And that starts close to home where we live. So I just want to wrap up by saying that you are here at an important moment in Colorado history. You are here to kick off this GoCo Inspire initiative. And this initiative could help set Colorado on a path to being a true national example, a state that really figures out how to connect people and nature together at scale. So thank you all for caring enough to be here today. Thank you for all the work that you do on a regular basis to do this. And this morning, I particularly want to thank Lisa Angenbrug and GoCo for having the bravery to launch us in this new and exciting direction. Thank you all very, very much.